Picture the largest palace in Europe, bigger than Versailles will ever be, bigger than the Vatican. 1,500 rooms sprawled along the Thames like a small city that swallowed a village and never apologised for it. Now fill it with rats. Fill it with courtiers who smile at each other by candlelight while carrying knives of paperwork that can end a family. Add the smell of the river at low tide, which is the smell of everything 500,000 people flush toward the sea. Add torchlight on wet cobbles, guards who are paid to suspect everyone, and one woman, 60 years old, painted white as a church wall, who owns all of it and cannot sleep in any of it. That's Whitehall Palace, the grandest address in England. Also a fire trap, a maze, and a place where the most powerful person in the kingdom lies awake at 2 a.m, listening for footsteps that shouldn't be there. A place where you could watch the Queen of England dance a galliard in cloth of silver at 10 o'clock, and by midnight watch her ladies search her mattress for needles dipped in poison. We're going back there tonight, not as tourists gawking at the tilt yard and the Holbein Gate. We're going inside after dark into the hours nobody wrote poems about. One winter, one boy, everything he carried, smelled, feared, and survived in the rooms where Elizabeth I spent her nights. So I make these history stories, and honestly I still have no idea whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just lying in the dark enjoying the fact that somebody else had to check a 500-year-old mattress for daggers. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Here we go. The mattress is fighting you. That's the first thing you need to understand about your job. A mattress stuffed with best down, 7 feet long, cased in fustian and ticking, does not want to be lifted by a 14-year-old boy. It slumps. It folds in the middle like a drunk man. It exhales feathers and old lavender into your face, and your arms are already burning because this is the 3rd one tonight, and it is not even the Queen's mattress. The Queen's bed has more than one. It has layers, like the earth has layers, and every single one of them has to be lifted, turned, pressed, and searched before Her Majesty's body is permitted anywhere near it. Your name is Simon Peck. You're 14 years old, you've been at Whitehall Palace for 11 weeks, and your hands smell permanently of beeswax, lavender, and other people's bedding. You're the lowest servant of the wardrobe of the beds, which sounds like a joke title until you learn what it means. It means that every pallet, bolster, featherbed, blanket, coverlet, and curtain that the court sleeps in passes at some point through your arms. It means you haul bedding up staircases that were built narrow on purpose so that armed men could not climb them quickly. It means your shoulders ache in a way your fathers ached after harvest, except your harvest never ends, because the court never stops sleeping and never stops being afraid of what might be hidden in the places where it sleeps. And that's the part they don't tell you when you arrive. The fear. You thought you were coming to make beds. You were actually coming to search them. Because here is the truth about Whitehall in the winter of 1593, the truth that lives under all the cloth of gold. The most powerful woman in the world is afraid of her own bed, not of sleeping in it, of what someone might have left inside it. A needle in the seam, powder shaken into the down, a blade slid flat between featherbed and bolster, waiting like a patient snake. Every night before the Queen of England lies down, her bedding is stripped, lifted, turned, pressed by hands, inch by inch, seam by seam. Every night. No exceptions. Not on holy days. Not when she comes back from dancing at midnight with her feet still moving. Not ever. The ladies do the final search, the one closest to her body. But someone has to do their heavy part first. The hauling and turning and beating, and someone has to do it for the pallets of the ladies themselves and the beds of the chamberers and the truckle beds, and the great bolsters that get aired in the gallery. That someone is you, your hands, your aching arms, your fingers pressed flat, sliding along a seam in candlelight, feeling for the thing you pray you never find. Master Crane is watching you do it right now, and he is not happy. You're pressing like you're petting a cat, he says. Press like you're looking for a needle that wants to kill a queen, because you are. Hugh Crane, groom of the wardrobe of the beds, 31 years in service, a man built like a door, with a grey beard cut square and hands so scarred and calloused that he can slide a palm along raw ticking without flinching. Those hands have made beds for the Queen since before your mother was born. He can tell down from flock blindfolded by the sound it makes when you punch it. He can smell damp in a bolster from across a room. He does not shout. He never shouts. He just says things in a low flat voice that somehow lands harder than shouting. You press harder. The ticking is coarse under your fingertips, cold in this unheated chamber, and the seam runs under your thumb like a ridge of scar tissue. You go inch by inch. The candle beside you spits and gutters. Somewhere below, in the dark tangle of the palace, a door slams and both of you go still for half a heartbeat, hands frozen on the cloth, before the ordinary noise of the night comes back and you breathe again. Good, Crane says quietly. You flinched. Keep flinching. The day you stop flinching in this house is the day you're no use to me. 11 weeks ago you were in Kent. Your father is a fuller. He beats and cleans wool for a living, thickens cloth in stinking troughs, and his one great achievement in life was getting a cousin's letter into the hands of a man who knew a man in the Lord Chamberlain's office. You arrived at the palace water stairs in October with one change of shirt, a wooden comb, and the firm belief that a palace would be warm. A palace is not warm. A palace is 1,000 fireplaces heating 100 rooms, while the other 1,400 rooms breed a cold so dense you can feel it pressing on your face like a wet hand. The gallery floors are so cold through your shoes before dawn that your toes go numb by the time you've carried the first load. The stone staircases sweat. The windows, thousands of them, magnificent, glazed, admired by every foreign visitor, leak drafts that find the back of your neck like they were aimed. You sleep in a garret over the wardrobe stores with 2 other boys, on a flock pallet, under 2 blankets you are honestly not supposed to have, and you have learned to sleep in your clothes with your cap pulled to your eyebrows. But cold is not the thing that keeps new boys from lasting. The thing that keeps new boys from lasting is the nights, because Whitehall does not sleep. That's the discovery that undoes people. You imagine a palace at night as a great beast lying down, and instead it is a beast that lies down and keeps one eye open and both ears up and its heart beating fast. The Queen keeps late hours, so the court keeps late hours, so the servants keep later hours still, and under everything, all night, every night, the watch walks. Yeomen of the guard in the outer rooms, gentlemen pensioners nearer in, porters at the gates calling to each other across courtyards, the soft, endless traffic of candles moving behind windows, which from the river must look like the whole palace is full of slow ghosts. And through it all, some nights, long past midnight, one particular set of footsteps in the long gallery, unhurried, back and forth, a tread too light for a guard and too restless for a servant. The first time you heard it, you asked Crane who walked the gallery at that hour. He didn't look up from the coverlet he was folding. "The Queen," he said. Now hold your end straight. You need to understand where you are, because Whitehall is not a building. Whitehall is an argument between buildings that has been going on for 60 years. Cardinal Wolsey built the heart of it when it was still called York Place, and built it too beautiful, which is one of the reasons he fell. Old King Henry took it from him in 1529 the way he took everything, and then spent the rest of his reign swelling it, grabbing land, throwing up galleries and lodgings and kitchens and a tilt yard and tennis courts and a cockpit, until the palace sprawled across 23 acres and swallowed the public road whole. The road is still there. King Street runs straight through the middle of the palace, ordinary Londoners and carts and mud passing between the two halves of the Queen's own house, and the palace simply steps over them, twice, on two great gatehouses with rooms up in the arches. The biggest one, the one everybody calls the Holbein Gate, is checkered flint and stone with 4 towers and terracotta roundels of emperors' heads staring down at the traffic, and there is something about walking under it, under the wheels and hooves echoing through the arch while a queen's palace passes over your head, that still makes the back of your neck prickle. 1,500 rooms. You've heard the number said by men who ought to know, and after 11 weeks you believe it, because you are still getting lost, not a little lost. Lost the way you get lost in a wood at dusk. There are galleries that turn twice and end at a locked door. Staircases that exist as far as you can tell for no one. Courtyards you've seen exactly once and never found again. Your second week carrying a bolster nearly as big as yourself. You took one wrong turning off the stone gallery and ended up somewhere near the old cockpit on the wrong side of the street, and it took a laughing scullion half an hour to walk you back, and Crane said nothing, which was worse than anything he could have said. And through all of it, day and night, runs the river. The Thames is the palace's front door. Kings and queens and ambassadors do not arrive through the mud of King Street. They come by water, up the grey highway, to the privy stairs where the royal barge ties up, its cushions and gilding kept in a barge house like a stabled animal. The river brings everything: food, firewood, sea coal, courtiers, news, and smell. Lord, the smell! At low tide the mudflats breathe out under the palace windows, centuries of the city's filth exhaling all at once. And on warm nights the Queen's own lodgings, the finest rooms in England, hung with tapestries worth more than whole towns, fill with the stink of the shore like any waterman's cottage. You have watched a lady of the bedchamber stand at a window with a pomander pressed to her nose, jewels on every finger, breathing through clove and ambergris because the greatest palace in Christendom smells some evenings like the underside of a dead barge. That's Whitehall. Glory upstairs, mud underneath, and the two of them married forever. Your kingdom within this kingdom is small and unglamorous. The wardrobe of the beds keeps its stores in chambers that smell of cedar shavings, wormwood and pepper dust, all of it laid against moth. Presses taller than a man stacked with folded featherbeds and fustians, chests of blankets, racks of curtains for beds you have never seen assembled, bolsters standing in rows like fat headless soldiers. Everything counted, everything counted. There is an inventory, and the inventory is scripture, and Crane can recite whole pages of it the way a priest recites psalms. 8 featherbeds of the finest down in the second press, 14 pairs of fustian blankets, 6 counterpoints of tapestry work, 1 frayed at the nether corner and noted so. When a single pillow bear went missing in your 4th week, the search lasted 2 days. 3 people were questioned, and it was found, in the end, folded inside a wrong pile by a laundry woman's error, and the relief in the wardrobe was the relief of men who had escaped something. Because in this house, a missing pillow bear is never just a missing pillow bear. A missing pillow bear is a question. Who took it? Why? What did they want with cloth that touches the Queen's household? What might they send back in its place? You thought that was madness your first month. You don't think it's madness anymore. Your days would sound simple if you listed them. Air the bedding. Beat the feather beds in the gallery over the wardrobe court. Punch in the down back to life until your knuckles are raw and the dust hangs in the cold light like flour. Carry the ladies' pallets. Trim and carry lights. Fetch from the laundry. Wax nothing, that's the joiner's work, but carry wax candles by the dozen, because the bedchamber burns wax, never tallow. Wax pure enough that the smoke doesn't blacken the ceilings or catch in a royal throat. Haul, fold, press, count, and above all be invisible. You do the loud work far from the Queen's side and the silent work near it. Near the privy lodgings you learn to walk like a cat, to set a burden down without a sound, to close a door with two hands so the latch kisses the plate instead of clicking. Because sound carries to her. Everything carries to her. She hears like a hawk, Crane told you early on, in the flat voice he uses for the things that matter. She sees like one too. You think she doesn't know your face. She knows every face under this roof. She'll pass you in a gallery one day and know you're the new wardrobe boy and know whether your hands were clean. Nothing in this house happens that she doesn't know. Remember that when you're tempted to be clever. You're never tempted to be clever. You're tempted constantly to be warm and to be asleep, and you get to be neither, because the wardrobe of the beds does its most important work at the hours when the rest of the world is unconscious. Here is what a night looks like. At dusk the palace begins to close like a fist. The gates shut, the porters set the great bars. The yeomen of the guard, big men in red, take up the night stations, and torches are lit in brackets along the courtyards, and the smell of pitch smoke drifts along the stone gallery and clings to the tapestries, which is your problem, because smoke-stunk hangings get taken down and aired, and guess whose shoulders they ride on. Supper happens somewhere above you. In a world of ushers and carvers and cupbearers you glimpse only as traffic. If the Queen sups privately, which she mostly does, the food comes up from kitchens across the street, carried through the gallery over the road, every dish tasted before it goes near her. Tasted. A man puts a piece of the Queen's dinner in his own mouth and swallows it and waits. That's a job. That's a man's whole employment, being a wall of flesh between her and whatever might be in the sauce. The first time you saw the assay done, the little ceremony of it, the kissing of the towel, the careful spoonful, you thought it was pageantry. Crane set you straight with one sentence. Pageantry is what they call precautions that haven't been needed yet. After supper, music sometimes. You've stood in the dark of the wardrobe court and heard it come down from the lit windows, vials and a virginal and once a voice, and the strangeness of it nearly cracked you open. The most guarded woman on earth, behind 3 courtyards and 100 armed men and doors and doors and doors, making music at 11 at night because she does not want to lie down. She never wants to lie down. You learn this slowly, the way you learn everything here from the edges. The Queen goes to bed late, and badly. She works past midnight with her secretaries, ink and candle smoke, reading and signing and questioning, and when the work is done she still doesn't sleep. She walks, or she has her ladies read to her, or she stands at a window. The women of the bedchamber trade shifts of tiredness like sentries, and some hours after the palace has gone quiet, when the tide is turning and the last barge lights have slid down river, that light tread starts up in the long gallery, back and forth over your head, 60 yards up and 60 yards back, a woman walking off something that has no name you're allowed to say. You ask Crane once, folding sheets at midnight, both of you grey with tiredness, why she does it. Why the richest woman in the world paces a cold gallery at 2 a.m. instead of sleeping in the softest bed you have ever touched with your own hands. Crane was quiet long enough that you thought he wouldn't answer. Because everyone she trusted her whole life is dying, he said at last, and half of what's left is lying to her, and she knows it. You'd walk too. Let me show you the bed, because you cannot understand the Queen's nights until you understand the bed, and you cannot understand the bed until you've carried it. The royal bedstead is a building, carved walnut and gilt, posts thick as young trees, a tester overhead like a painted ceiling of its own, curtains of silk and cloth of silver on rings that must be oiled so they draw without shrieking. That part isn't yours. Joiners and grooms far above you tend the frame. What's yours, what rides on your arms and ruins your back, is everything soft. The pallet of straw at the very bottom, coarse and clean, changed and checked, because straw can hide anything. On the straw, a canvas. On the canvas, featherbeds, plural, each one a soft giant, each one lifted and turned so the down doesn't pack into lumps under a royal spine. Then the fustians, the blankets, fine Spanish wool so tightly fulled your father would weep at the quality. Then sheets of holland so smooth they pour through your fingers like cool water. Then bolster and pillows and the counterpoint on top. Embroidery heavy as chain mail. Making that bed properly takes multiple people the better part of an hour, and it is made like a ritual because it is one, every layer smoothed by hand, and here is the detail that tells you everything about this house. At the end, when all is done, the bed is pressed, hands flat, leaning in, along the whole length. And in the old ceremony, men rolled on the layers themselves, lay down on the Queen's bed with their own bodies, so that if anything sharp waited in the softness, it would find a servant's flesh before it ever found hers. Think about that. There are men whose duty is to press their bodies where the Queen's body will lie, as human proof against hidden steel. You're not one of those men. You're the boy who carried the feather bed up the stair. But you have stood in the doorway holding the next layer while the searching was done, and you have watched hands you know, hands that have taught you, move along seams with a patience that is really a kind of prayer. And you have understood that everything in this palace, every ceremony that visitors call magnificence, is armour. The tasting of the food, the searching of the bed, the locked doors between the bedchamber and the world, and the ladies who sleep on pallets across those doors, so that no one can enter without stepping over living women. The Queen of England sleeps at the centre of concentric rings of other people's bodies, and in the winter of 1593 the rings are tightening, because something is wrong at court and even a wardrobe boy can smell it. You noticed it first as small things. The way the yeomen at the Privy Gallery door doubled from 2 to 4 one week in November, no explanation. The way a groom of the chamber you liked, a joking man, stopped joking. The way Master Crane began doing something he had not done in your first weeks, unlocking the wardrobe presses himself in the morning and looking, just looking at the folded linen as if counting it with his eyes before letting anyone touch it. The way the word poison stopped being sayable. There are words like that here. You learned it the hard way, and the hard way was a Tuesday in late November, in the laundry court, when you were 15 minutes into unloading sweet bags of the linen presses and made the mistake of repeating something you'd heard on the street side of the Holbein Gate. Some carters talk, something about the Queen's doctor and the Spanish and gold, and you repeated maybe 9 words of it, lightly, the way boys pass along anything, and a hand closed on your collar from behind and Crane actually walked you, off your feet into the cedar-smelling dark of the store and shut the door. He did not shout. He put his face down level with yours. Where did you hear that? The street. A carter. Everyone was saying. Everyone is not a wardrobe servant of the Queen's household. His voice was so quiet you had to stop breathing to hear it. Listen to me now, because I'll say this once. There are men in this palace whose whole employment is listening. They listen at gates, in yards, in taverns across the street. And when a boy who handles the Queen's own bed linen is heard talking about poison and doctors and Spanish gold, that boy does not get to explain that he was only repeating a carter. That boy gets questions in a room, and everyone who shares his garret gets questions, and his master, who vouched for him, gets questions. He straightened up. You carry her sheets, Simon. You're inside the wall. Things that are gossip outside the wall are evidence inside it. Do you understand the difference? You said yes. You did not fully understand then. You would. By February, God help you, you would understand it completely. But before the winter turns dark, it gives you one great blazing day, and I want you to have it too, because the people of this palace lived on days like this the way you live on bread. The 17th of November, Accession Day, the Queen's Day, 35 years to the day since she came to the throne, and the whole city keeps it like a second Christmas. Bells from 100 steeples from first light, bonfires being stacked in the streets by afternoon. And at Whitehall, the tilt. The tilt yard lies along the west side of the palace across the street, a long gravelled ground with a barrier down the middle and galleries and scaffolds around it, and on Accession Day it becomes the centre of England. Thousands come. Thousands. Ordinary Londoners pay their pennies and pack the stands. Apprentices and fishwives and lawyers shoulder to shoulder, because this is the one great day when the palace opens its spectacle to anyone with a coin, and the court means them to see it and go home telling everyone what they saw. You are supposed to be hauling cushions. That is your official reason for existing that day. Cushions for the galleries, armloads of them, and you haul them, and then Crane, who's been alive long enough to understand what a boy's face looks like, tells you to go stand at the yard rail with the other household lads for 1 hour and not make him regret it. You will remember that hour when you are old, the stands roaring, the smell of the crowd, ale and wet wool and gingerbread, cut through with the sharper smells of the yard itself, horse and leather, raked gravel and armour, which has its own smell, oil and cold iron warming in the pale sun. The knights come in procession, and this is not war, this is theatre wearing war's body. Each great man enters in invented splendour, in fantastic disguise, with his followers dressed to a theme, with a pageant car or a speech, servants costumed as wild men or shepherds or virtues, presents and poems sent up to the Queen in her gallery window. The Earl of Cumberland rides as the Queen's own champion with her jewelled glove pinned in his hat, and above it all, in the gallery over the yard, small at that distance and yet impossible to look away from, a figure in white and silver catching the low November light like a struck flint. Her. Then the running begins, and you feel it before you see it. feel it in the rail under your hands, in your teeth. 2 horses coming at each other down either side of the barrier, big destriers at full career, the ground shaking and the lances come down and meet the shields, and the crack of breaking ash goes off like ordnance and splinters, cartwheel up into the air higher than the roofs while the crowd loses its mind. Again and again. Scorekeepers marking broken staves, trumpets between courses. A rider reels in the saddle, keeps his seat, and the stands groan and cheer in the same breath. The boy next to you, a spit boy from the kitchens with burn-scarred forearms, is screaming himself hoarse. You realize you are too. And here is the strange thing, the thing you only understand later, lying on your pallet with your ears still ringing. All of it. The whole immense day, the armour and the poetry and the thousands of ordinary people cheering, all of it is built around one truth so fragile nobody says it aloud. She is 60 years old, she has no child, she has named no successor, and every man in that yard, every knight breaking a lance for her glory, knows that England's peace hangs on the heartbeat of one ageing woman in a gallery window. They cheer so loudly, you think, partly so they cannot hear themselves worrying. That night the palace glows. Bonfires across the river, bonfires in the streets, bells still swinging somewhere. You carry the gallery cushions back by torchlight, arms dead, ears ringing, happier than you have been since Kent. 19 days later, though you will not learn the date for years, matters begin moving in secret rooms that will freeze this whole palace with fear, and your winter of glory becomes a winter of locked doors. But first, December, and the ordinary brutal poetry of winter service, because most of your life is not tilt yards. Most of your life is this, 4 in the morning, or 5, depending on the day's demands, and the garret so cold your breath has frosted the blanket edge by your chin. You wake because Tam kicks you. Tam is 12, from Southwark, the other junior boy, all elbows and opinions, and he kicks you awake because last week you kicked him. And this is the economy of boys. The third of you, Ned, is 16 and above kicking, and is already up breaking the skin of ice on the washing water with the handle of the ewer. The crack of it is the true sound of winter mornings. You wash your face because Crane checks, and the water is so cold it feels like being slapped by a ghost, and your cracked knuckles sting where the chilblains have split, and then you dress, which takes 11 seconds because you slept in most of it, and you go down into the dark palace with the rushlight, and the day takes you. Fires first in the wardrobe rooms, small ones, sea coal from the river barges, and your hands stink of coal smoke until you scrub them, and they must be scrubbed raw before they touch linen, so you scrub them in cold water with black soap, and they crack a little more, and Crane looks at them and gives you a pot of goose grease without a word, and you grease your knuckles like a labourer, which is what you are, a labourer whose materials happen to be worth more than a manor. Then the airing. God, the airing. Damp is the enemy in December. Damp in the presses, damp in the bolsters, damp breathing off the river into every cloth thing in the palace, and damp bedding for a queen with rheum in her bones is a dismissal waiting to happen. So everything is aired, in rotation, before fires, over racks, and you carry it all. A featherbed across your shoulders like a soft corpse, blankets in stacks to your chin, walking by memory because you cannot see your feet. The weight settles into your spine and stays there. A dull, permanent ache between the shoulder blades that you stop mentioning because everyone in the wardrobe has it. Ned says you can tell a bed servant across a courtyard by the walk, and the smells become your calendar. cedar and pepper in the presses, the hot dusty smell of down beaten in cold air, wet wool steaming by the fire, which smells exactly like your father's fulling shed, and homesickness gets you by the throat at strange moments because of it. Rosewater and orris from the sweet bag sewn among the Queen's linen, a smell so fine that months later, in another life, catching it on a stranger will stop you dead in a street. And under everything, always, the river, mud and tar and tide. You see the Queen 4 times in December. I want to be honest with you about that, because stories lie about palaces. Boys in stories are always catching the monarch's eye. Real service is different. Real service is a life spent within 100 feet of a person you almost never see, feeling her presence the way you feel weather. You know her moods before you see her face, because her moods come down through the house like a change of pressure. A sharp morning in the bedchamber, and the ladies walk out with their faces closed, and the ushers snap, and the grooms snap at the pages, and by 10 o'clock a boy in a wardrobe court 2 courtyards away is being cuffed for nothing, and that is the Queen's temper arriving at your level, translated through 6 ranks of frightened people. But 4 times you see her, once at a distance going to chapel, a procession glimpsed down the length of the stone gallery, and what strikes you is the silence of it, the way the whole gallery of kneeling courtiers holds its breath as she passes. Once from the wardrobe court, a pale figure at a lit window at 1 in the morning, unmoving, looking at the river for so long you got cold watching and gave up first, once so close it stops your heart. You are kneeling in the matted gallery outside the privy lodgings with an armload of folded fustians, waiting to be let past and doors open, and instead of the usher it is her, walking fast, ladies hurrying after, and you get your face down so quickly you crack your chin on the top blanket, and she goes by in a storm of civet perfume and silk hissing like rain, and you see for 1 second, at the level of your lowered eyes, her hand. An old woman's hand, thin, the skin loose over the bones, heavy with rings, and the fingers are working, restless, snapping at nothing. Then gone. A door. Voices. You breathe again. That hand does more to your understanding than any sermon. Under the silver gowns and the painted face and the 35 years of glory, there is an old woman whose hands will not be still. The 4th time you hear her before you see her, and what you hear is rage. It is mid-December, late, and you and Ned are carrying pallets for the ladies along the passage that skirts the privy gallery, and from behind doors comes the Queen's voice, and it is not the bell-like voice of processions, it is a blade. You cannot make out sentences, only the edge of them, rising, cutting off some lower voice that tries twice to answer and gives up, and then one phrase arrives whole through the oak thrown like a plate. God's death. Must she be told nothing in her own house? Something strikes a table. The lower voice murmurs. Silence. Ned has you by the sleeve, and you're both walking, fast and soundless, gone before the door can open, because Crane's first commandment is that nobody important must ever come out of a room and find you existing near it. Around you, meanwhile, the palace is filling and tightening for Christmas. The court at Christmas swells like a tide. Hundreds more mouths, hundreds more beds, and every bed is yours. The revels men are in and out fitting the hall for plays. There will be players up from the city between Christmas and 12th night. There always are, and the kitchen boys say the Lord Chamberlain's own company is bringing comedies, and even the wardrobe, even Crane, softens fractionally at Christmas, because at Christmas the household is fed to bursting, and there is dancing below stairs on 12th night, and for 12 days the palace almost lets itself believe that nothing is wrong. Almost. Because here is what you notice, being nobody, being a pair of arms in the background of the season. The great men are not merry this Christmas. You see them in passing, the way you see everything. The Lord Treasurer, old Burghley, gout-swollen, carried through the gallery in a chair, his face like a man doing arithmetic that will not come right. His son, Sir Robert Cecil, small and crooked-backed and quick-eyed, who moves through the palace like a cat through a kitchen, seeing everything, greeting everyone by exactly the right degree. And the Earl of Essex. Everyone sees Essex. Essex cannot cross a courtyard without being an event. Tall, splendid, laughing too loudly with his men, the Queen's young favourite, 30 years her junior, and lately, say the kitchen boys who say everything, fancying himself a master of intelligence, keeping his own web of informers to rival Cecil's, hunting for some great discovery to lay at the Queen's feet like a retriever with a duck. You are 14. You do not understand what any of this means. You only know the feel of the house, the way you know the feel of a seam under your fingers. And in the last week of Advent, the feel of the house changes. It happens fast, the way ice comes to a bucket. One morning, there are strangers at the gates being questioned longer than usual. One evening, the yeomen on the privy stairs are men you don't know, brought in from somewhere, and the ones you do know are stiff as posts. Deliveries that used to pass with a nod are opened. A physician's boy who has come in and out of the palace for years, a familiar face with a satchel of glass vials, is stopped in your sight at the court gate, and his satchel is emptied onto a trestle, vial by vial, in the rain, while two men in dark clothes watch, and nobody explains anything to anybody. And in the wardrobe, Crane gathers the three of you, and his voice is flatter than you have ever heard it. From tonight, he says, no piece of linen enters the Queen's stores that hasn't passed my hands or Master Jennings's. Nothing from the laundry without the tally sealed. You'll carry in pairs, both of you with your eyes open, and if any man you don't know so much as offers to help you carry, you set nothing down, you go nowhere with him, you come to me. If you're asked for so much as a pillow bear by anyone outside this wardrobe, whoever they are, whatever livery they wear, you come to me. You see anything strange in a seam, a stain, a smell, a stitch that isn't laundry work, you touch nothing further, and you come to me. Tam, who is 12, and brave the way 12 is brave, asks it straight out. Master Crane, is somebody trying to kill the Queen? The silence in that cedar-smelling room lasts 3 full breaths. Somebody, Crane says, is always trying to kill the Queen. The only thing that changes is how close they've got. Go to your work. Christmas comes anyway. Fear never yet stopped a feast. The hall is dressed with holly and ivy and bay until it smells like a wood, and the fires roar, and for 12 days the palace eats like a siege in reverse. Below stairs the tables groan, brawn and souse, roast beef in slabs, plum pottage, and you eat until your ribs hurt because Crane's other commandment, the kind one, is that a boy who hauls beds all winter eats everything set in front of him. On St. Stephen's Day there is a play in the hall, and though your kind watches from doorways and stair-turns if you watch at all, you catch pieces of it, torchlight and painted cloth, and a man's voice filling the roof beams, and the whole glittering court laughing together in the dark like one animal, and above them, on the chair of state, the still white centre of it all, who claps her ringed hands, and the court watches her clap, and claps harder. You are learning to read this place. Everyone watches her. She watches everyone. Nobody watches the doors more than the men whose profession it is. And this Christmas, in the shadows past the torchlight, there are more of those men than there are ever supposed to be. On 12th night the servants dance. Below stairs a fiddle and a pipe and a hall floor cleared of trestles, and the laundry girls dance with the grooms, and Ned dances with a kitchen maid he has been silently in love with since Michaelmas, silent no longer, and Tam eats himself sick on comfits, and you, Simon Peck of Kent, dance twice, badly, with the girl from the spicery who laughs at you kindly, and for one evening the palace is only a big house full of people at the turn of the year. You will hold on to that night, because 11 days later the world you're standing in cracks straight down the middle. You remember the morning precisely, and you will remember it your whole life, the way people remember the morning a war reached their village. It is the end of January, a Monday, iron grey, the river running high and loud past the stairs, and you and Ned are bringing sealed linen baskets up from the laundry tally through the outer court when you both stop because the court is wrong. It is full of men standing still. Grooms, porters, a scattering of kitchen folk, 2 yeomen who ought to be at the gate, all of them stopped in the cold, all turned the same way, listening to a man in the middle who has just come from the city side. And there is a sound the crowd is making, a low churn of voices, and it is the sound frightened livestock make. You have heard it before, in Kent. The day lightning fired a barn. Ned grips your arm. You catch it in pieces, over shoulders, everyone repeating it to everyone. Dr. Lopez is taken, Dr. Roderigo Lopez, the Queen's own physician, her chief physician, the man who has attended her body for years, the Portuguese doctor, the man whose satchel and whose hands and whose purges and syrups have gone into her when no other man in England could approach her sick. Taken, arrested, examined, and the word that follows his name through the crowd like a rat through straw, the word you were collared for saying in November, the word that is now in every mouth in the courtyard at once. Poison. They are saying he was paid by Spain. They are saying letters were found, ciphers, strange merchandise codes, musk and amber standing in for treason. They are saying 50,000 crowns. They are saying the Earl of Essex smoked him out, has been hunting him for weeks, swore to the Queen he had found the greatest treason of the age. They are saying the doctor swore on his knees he is innocent, that it is all malice and trade in secrets gone wrong. They are saying, quietly some of them, that even the Cecils doubted it at first, that the Queen herself raged at Essex, called the charge nothing, defended her doctor, and that Essex shut himself up in a fury and came out swearing he would prove it or die. They are saying above all the only part that matters in this courtyard. The hand that mixed the Queen's medicines may have been bought to kill her. Standing there with a sealed basket of the Queen's linen in your arms, you feel the cold arrive in your stomach and settle in, and it will not fully leave until spring. Because think now what this means inside the wall, not politics. You don't understand politics. Think what it means to the people whose hands touch what she eats, drinks, wears, sleeps in. It means the unthinkable arithmetic is out in the open. The danger was inside. Past the gates, past the guards, past the tasters and the searchers and the locked doors and the ladies sleeping across the threshold. Inside. At her bedside, with a spoon. It means every precaution you have been part of for 3 months was aimed exactly right, and might still not have been enough. It means every servant in this palace, from the Lord Chamberlain to a 14-year-old fuller's son from Kent, wakes up the next morning under a new sun, and the new sun is suspicion. The palace does not panic. That's the thing that awes you, looking back. The palace does something worse than panic. It goes quiet and it tightens everywhere all at once like a ship's rigging in rising wind. The gates now open a crack where they used to open wide. Every basket is opened, every seal checked twice, every stranger walked, not directed, walked by a yeoman to wherever he is going, and walked back. The taster's ceremony at the Queen's meals, which had softened over years into half-ritual, is performed now with a slow completeness that makes men sweat to watch. The apothecary's stores are inventoried by men from outside the household, and the Queen's physic, her medicines themselves, becomes a thing handled like gunpowder, prepared under witness, tasted, sealed, carried under eyes, and the wardrobe, your world, your seams. Crane works you like the linen itself is on trial. Every piece, every night, hands and eyes, both sides, every hem. He teaches you now what he only half taught before. What a resewn seam looks like. How laundry stitching differs from tailor's stitching differs from a stranger's hurried needle. How to draw a seam over the back of your hand so your skin reads what your eyes miss. How to smell a piece of linen properly in 3 places because sweet bags can mask 1 patch but rarely 3. Your fingertips grow so schooled that years from now, an old man, you will still absently read the hems of your own shirts in the dark. Understand what you are now, Crane says one midnight. The 2 of you alone over a trestle of Holland, your breath fogging, candle doubled so the light crosses and kills the shadows in the folds. Any fool with a halberd can guard a gate. The guard can search a man, but her sheets, her shifts, the pillow under her face, those pass through 6 pairs of hands, and ours are last but 1. If evil reaches her through cloth, it reaches her through us, through me and through you. That's not fear, boy. That's the shape of the duty. Hold it steady. You hold it steady. In February 1594, the whole palace is holding something steady. And through those weeks, over your head, the light footsteps in the long gallery walk later and longer than you have ever heard them. She defended him. That is the part the older servants keep returning to below stairs in voices that stop when doors open. When Essex first accused the doctor, the Queen scolded him for it in front of the council, called him rash, took her physician's part. Her own judgment vouched for the man, and now the examinations grind on across the river, and the confessions come, extracted the way confessions are extracted in that place, and each week the thing looks blacker, and whatever the truth of it, and men will argue the truth of it for 400 years, this much is certain, and this much you can feel through the floors of Whitehall like cold rising. She is a woman of 60 who must now lie down each night with the knowledge that the hand she trusted on her own pulse may have been for sale. You'd walk too. Now I need to tell you about the aglet, because this is where your own small story knots itself into the great one, and because a boy in a frightened palace should never, ever find something he cannot explain. It is the 2nd week of February. You're doing the deep airing of bolsters from the privy lodgings, the outer chambers, not the bedchamber itself, but near enough that everything from those rooms is handled under the new rules, in pairs, logged, sealed. You're working a bolster over the rack before the fire, kneading the down along its length, and your fingers, your schooled fingertips, catch something in the end seam that is not down and not a quill end. Something hard, thin, metal. Your whole body goes cold in front of a roaring fire. You do exactly what you were taught, which is nothing. You take your hands off the bolster, you step back, and you say Ned's name in a voice that brings him across the room fast, and Ned feels it too, and neither of you touches it further, and Crane is fetched, and Crane comes with his mouth already flat, and behind him, because this is February 1594 and nothing is small anymore, comes Master Jennings, and behind Jennings, summoned by the smell of trouble, a gentleman usher. They open the seam under 4 pairs of eyes with the wardrobe shears, thread by thread, on a white cloth laid on the trestle, in silence. And the silence is the loudest thing you've ever stood inside. And out of the down, onto the white cloth, falls an aglet, a little metal tag from the end of a lace, the kind that finishes the points and laces of fine clothing, silver gilt, bent, no longer than your thumbnail, the kind of thing that lives by the 1,000 on the bodies of the great. The kind of thing that gets loose when clothing is changed in a hurry by candlelight, rolls, and works its way into a seam gap of a bolster over months of nights. In October, it would have been a shrug, a pretty scrap for the sewing women. In February, 4 grown men stand around it on a white cloth as if it might speak. It is nothing. Everyone in the room slowly agrees it is nothing. It is examined, turned, smelled, held to the light. An aglet, bent from some gown or sleeve, worked in through a gapped stitch. The stitch itself, honest laundry mending, gone slightly loose. Nothing. The usher loses interest. Jennings notes it in the wardrobe book anyway, because everything is noted now. Found in seam of bolster from the privy lodging, 1 aglet silver gilt, bent. The bolster is resewn under witness. The room breathes, and then Crane picks the little thing off the cloth and, instead of dropping it into the box of oddments, puts it in your hand. Yours, he says. You found it. Keep it where you keep your wits, and let it remind you they work. You will keep it in the seam of your own doublet first, and later, for 50 years, in a little horn box, and it will be the first thing your hand goes to on bad nights, a bent scrap of silver gilt that once frightened 4 grown men, your whole winter pressed into an inch of metal. But that comes later. Right now your knees are only just remembering how to hold you, and the fire is only just starting to feel warm again, and Ned, walking out, knocks his shoulder companionably against yours. 1 bump, which from Ned is an embrace with trumpets. That night you cannot sleep, which is a joke God plays on the servants of the sleepless. You lie on your pallet between Tam's snoring and the frost flowers on the little window, and your fingers keep feeling the ghost of hard metal inside soft down, and your mind keeps walking the distance, the terribly short distance, between an aglet and a needle. Same size, same seam, same fingers finding it. And somewhere across 2 courtyards, behind her locked doors, past the pallets of her ladies, the woman all of this is for is lying awake too. You know she is. The whole palace knows it now, the way a house knows. The Queen sleeps badly, has always slept badly, and sleeps worse now. The women of the bedchamber, who tell nothing, still cannot stop the palace reading their faces at morning, and their faces say broken nights. Candles burning in the privy lodgings at hours when even the bakers are asleep. Music sent for at midnight, viols in a winter chamber because music will sometimes carry a mind past the point where its own thoughts snag. Old prayers, the gallery up and down, an old woman's light feet and 2 ladies trailing her with wraps she will not put on. 60 years old, She has outlived nearly everyone who was there at the beginning. Lester, dead these 5 years, and they say she keeps his last letter in a casket by her bed, marked in her own hand, and no one is permitted to touch it. Walsingham, dead. The dark spy master who caught the plots before they flowered. Hatton, dead. The friends of her body's youth, dead, and their sons now kneel where their fathers knelt. Handsome and hungry and 30 years younger than her, and she is nobody's fool, and has never been anybody's fool. And that is precisely the cruelty of it. She can count, better than anyone in England, exactly how much of the love around her is arithmetic. So she does not lie down. Lying down is where the thoughts are. Lying down in the dark, behind the silk curtains, in the softness your own hands have pressed and searched, is where a mind can run all the way out to the end of every rope. The doctor with his warm hands and his vials, the 50,000 crowns, the cipher letters about musk and pearls, the Scottish queen she signed away 7 years ago, whose son waits north with his own arithmetic, the succession she will not name, because to name an heir is to invite England to start loving the sunrise, and she has watched men's eyes do that all her life, slide past the old queen toward the next reign, and she would rather rule a kingdom of uncertainty than reign 1 hour as somebody's yesterday. None of this is yours to know, wardrobe boy. You know footsteps overhead and candlelight under doors, but footsteps and candlelight at 2 a.m. in February teach a boy more about the weight of a crown than all the trumpets of Accession Day. One of those nights teaches you most of all. It is the last week of February, and it is the closest you will ever stand to her, and no one will ever know you were there. It begins, like everything in your life, with bedding, past midnight, and you and Crane are still up, because the household of the Lady Warwick has need of a fresh pallet and bolster carried to the lodgings near the Privy Gallery. One of the Queen's oldest friends lodged close, and close lodgings mean night carrying under the new rules, sealed, paired, logged. Crane takes the pallet, you take the bolster, and you go up through the sleeping house, through the smell of dead fires and cold stone and old rushes, past a yeoman at the gallery foot who knows Crane's face 31 years and still checks the seal, torchlight sliding over you both, and up and along. The matted gallery near the privy lodgings is kept dim at night, a lamp burning low at either end, and you walk it the way you have been taught, on the outer edge of the matting where it doesn't creak, burden balanced, breathing quiet. Ahead, Crane stops at the Warwick door, and the door opens to his soft knock, and warmth and candlelight spill out, and a waiting woman takes charge of him and the pallet, and you stand outside holding the bolster, waiting your turn, alone in 60 feet of near darkness. And at the far end of the gallery a door you've never once seen open, opens. No noise, just a tall crack of gold light falling across the matting, and a shape in it. And your body understands before your mind does, and folds you down onto one knee behind the bolster, into the shadow along the wall, face down, heart going like a rabbit. She comes into the gallery. You know it is her the way you would know thunder. 2 ladies follow, one carrying a small candle branch, and their light swims along the walls, over the dark tapestries, and stops, because she has stopped, at the long window that looks on the river, perhaps 20 feet from where you kneel in the dark, being a piece of furniture. You should not look. You look. God forgive you, you're 14, and you look, one eye past the curve of the bolster. She's in her nightgown, the loose furred gown for chamber wear, a shawl over it, and her head is wrapped in a coif, and there is no paint, No white mask, no wig, no pearls the size of thumbnails. A thin old woman with a high, naked forehead in the candle shadow, holding her shawl at the throat with one ringed hand, looking at the black river through the black glass, and the glass gives her back to herself faintly, and she stands very straight. Even now, even here, at whatever hour of a February night this is, with nobody to perform for but two exhausted ladies and a window, the spine is a queen's spine. Her lips are moving slightly, praying or arguing, with God, or with a doctor across the river, or with a dead man's letter in a casket. You cannot hear. You will never know. One of the ladies murmurs something, offering, perhaps, bed, warmth, sense. The Queen answers without turning, low, only 4 words riding clear along the gallery's cold air, in that voice that even at a murmur has iron filings in it. They sleep. I watch. And she watches. The river, the dark, the country on the far bank, all of it hers, all of it, this night, needing her awake, or so the 60-year-old sinew of her insists. The sinew that has held a kingdom together since before your parents met, that outfaced Spain's great fleet not 6 years past, that signs men's deaths and dances galliards and cannot, will not, hand the night watch to anyone else, because there is no one else. There has never been anyone else. That is what the crown is. You understand suddenly. Kneeling behind a bolster with your knee going dead on cold matting. It is the job of being the one who watches while they sleep, and it is for life, and there is no relief at dawn. Then the candle branch moves, and the shape turns from the window, and the little procession goes back the way it came, and the tall crack of gold narrows and is gone, and the gallery is dim and empty and ordinary, and your heart is beating in your ears. The Warwick door opens, Crane comes out, takes one look down the gallery, then one look at your face and knows. Of course he knows. He knows everything. He doesn't speak until you're 2 staircases down and clear of listening walls, then quietly walk in. Whatever you saw, it has no words. Not to Ned, not to Tam, not to your own mother on her deathbed. A man who serves near the Queen's knights carries what he sees to his grave, and it isn't loyalty, boy, it's mercy. She has one place on this earth where she's allowed to be an old woman, and it is that gallery in the dark, and it stays hers. Do you understand me? Yes, Master Crane. Good lad. 20 steps of silence. Then, so low you nearly miss it. I saw her father once the same way. Night and a window. Big as a church door he was, and afraid of the dark by the end. He shifts his grip on his end of nothing, an old man's habit gesture, hands wanting a burden. They're the only people in England who are never left alone, and the loneliest souls in it. Sleep's the only kingdom she never conquered. Come on, there's 4 hours till the fires. You will keep that gallery to your grave, as ordered, all but once, an old man by a fire half a century on, and even then you will tell it the way I am telling it to you now, softly, at night, to people who are falling asleep, which is perhaps the only telling that mercy allows. March comes in wet. The palace stink lifts and changes, coal smoke thinning, river mud richer, the first cress and green stuff coming up to the kitchens from the gardens upriver. The examinations across the water grind toward their end, and at the end of February, though the news takes its time seeping through the walls, the doctor and 2 others are tried at the Guildhall, and the verdict is the verdict everyone knew it would be, and the word below stairs is only a question of when. And here is the strange true thing, the thing I want you to lie there and hold, because it is the key to her whole reign, and nobody below stairs missed it, even if the histories nearly did. The Queen does not sign, not quickly. The law is spoken, Essex has his triumph, the city howls for it. Ballads about the poisoning doctor are selling at the crosses, and the warrant sits and sits. Weeks, months in the end, into the green of the year. The kitchen boys say the Queen doubts. The ushers say the Queen is merciful. Crane, asked by Ned what he thinks, folds a blanket to a perfect edge and says the only thing he ever says about it. I think she knew the man 12 years. You don't wash 12 years off with one warrant. Whatever the judges found, some part of her is still his patient. Let her take her time. It's her hand has to carry it. When it finally happens in June, at Tyburn, you are not there. I want to be plain about that, because this story has enough horrors without borrowing more. You're at Whitehall, beating summer dust out of winter hangings in the wardrobe court, and the news comes back into the palace toward evening with the men who went to watch, the way weather comes in on people's clothes. The doctor died protesting that he loved the Queen better than he loved Jesus Christ, and the crowd laughed at him, coming from a converted Portuguese Jew, and made the death crueler for it. And you hear all of this second hand over supper, and you find you cannot finish the pottage, and Ned quietly finishes it for you, and nobody says anything, and that is the whole of it. Whether the doctor was guilty as tried, or a broker of secrets who swam too long among sharks, or something between, men were still arguing when your grandchildren were born, and they are arguing yet. What you knew, what your winter taught you in your hands and your spine is only this. The fear was real, on both sides of every locked door, and fear is a thing that must land on someone, and it landed on him. The Queen, they say, let his widow keep his goods and his ring. Make of that what you will. She never spoke of him after, and the light footsteps in the gallery went on, that summer and every summer, as long as there was Queen to make them. Spring loosens the palace the way Thor loosens a river. Not all at once, and never completely, but you feel it. The doubled guards thin back toward ordinary. The gates learn to open wide again, or wider. Men below stairs make jokes again, careful ones, then careless ones. And your own body, which has been carrying winter like a second load of bedding, begins to give it back. The chilblains heal. The ache between your shoulders becomes just the ache of the work instead of the ache of the work plus dread. And Crane, one bright, loud morning in April, with the wardrobe court full of hangings snapping on lines, and the down dust golden in the sun, tells you to leave the beating to Tam for an hour and follow him, and takes you somewhere you have never been. Up. There is a stair you have passed 100 times, mistaking it for storage, that climbs inside the thickness of the wall near the great gate, turning and turning, past a room where spare cresset irons rust in a corner, up a ladder stair steep as ambition, through a door that Crane unlocks with one of the keys that live on his belt like a second skeleton, and out, blinking into wind and light, onto the leads, the roof of Whitehall, the flat lead walkways that run between the ridges and turrets, where the plumbers come to mend and the fire watch comes with buckets in dry summers, and where an old groom of the wardrobe comes, it turns out, a few times a year, to stand and to look, and has decided the time has come to show his boy why. You have never been higher than a hayloft. The world you have been drowning in for 6 months lies down flat at your feet and becomes a map. The palace first, all around you, its impossible tangle finally confessing its shape. Courtyards you know from inside opening like boxes with the lids off. The great hall's roof, the chapel, the long spine of the galleries running toward the river, smoke standing up from 30 kitchen chimneys, and there below the street, King Street, running its cart and mud life straight through the middle of everything, and the Holbein Gate stepping over it in checkered flint, and tiny people passing under the arch like ants under a stile. The tilt yard empty and raked where the ground shook in November. The gardens, knots of green and gravel, the orchard, the little banqueting house, and then, beyond, everything. The river, brimming and silver, bending away east, so crowded with sails and wherries it looks stitched. Westminster hard by to the south, the Abbey's towers, the great hall where they tried the doctor's fellows, close enough to hit with a stone from a sling. And north and east, London itself, a grey-brown sea of roofs inside its walls, steeples standing up out of it past counting, old Paul's on its hill huge above everything even with its spire long gone to lightning, and the smoke of 200,000 souls making its own weather over the whole of it. There, Crane says. He's not looking at the view. He's looking at you looking at it. That's what all the fuss is for. You don't understand. He lets the wind have a minute of silence, then goes on, in the flat voice, the true one. Every seam you've searched, every seal, every tally, every guard on every stair, every man tasting her dinner and every lady sleeping across her door. You've spent a winter thinking it was about one woman's body, and it is, but stand here and look at what her body is holding up. All that. His chin moves along the horizon, taking in the roofs, the steeples, the masts. One heartbeat, boy, no child, no named heir. If that heartbeat stops wrong, everything you're looking at goes into the fire of every man who thinks his claim is good, and the Spaniard comes back with his ships, and boys like you leave wardrobes and take up pikes. Your father's cloth trade, your mother's market, Tam's mother in Southwark, all of it floats on one old woman getting safe through the night every night, until God settles the matter kindly. So, he turns for the stair. That's why we press the seams. Come on, the dust won't beat itself. You stand one more moment, wind pulling to your cap. The bent aglet a little hard secret in your doublet seam, looking at a city that does not know your name and never will, that will sleep tonight because of 10,000 small unfamous vigilances, of which yours is one. That could be you used to think, watching great men in the galleries. This is you think now on the roof, this exactly, and it is enough. Then down the turning stair, back into the smell of dust and cedar, back to work. Summer teaches you the palace's other seasons of fear, the ones that have nothing to do with poison. Fire, first of all. A palace is a bonfire that hasn't been introduced to itself yet. 1,500 rooms of timber, tapestry, rushes and open flame. And the fire watch in a dry July is real work with real dread in it. One hot night you're shaken awake to a smell of smoke, and are 3 courtyards away with a leather bucket before you are fully conscious, and it is nothing. A beam smouldering behind a bread oven's back. Caught early, drowned, done. But you stand afterward in the bake-yard with 40 half-dressed people, watching a wet black scar in old timber, everyone silently building the other version in their heads, the one where the wind is up and it isn't caught, and Crane says, to no one, "One coal! All of Whitehall is one coal and a lazy watch away from a field of ash," and everyone goes back to bed and lies there smelling phantom smoke, and plague, always plague, the summer terror. Last year, the year before you came, It was so terrible in the city, dying by the thousand every week, playhouses shut, that the court fled the neighbourhood of London entirely. And this year every rumour of a marked house in Westminster runs through the palace like a draught. The Queen's fear of it is old and cold and practical. Searchers watch the parishes. The household holds its breath through August. The court goes on progress in the worst of it, out into the country to great men's houses, and the beds, dear God, the beds go too, carted, barged, and half the wardrobe with them, though not you, not this year. This year you are left with Jennings and the home stores, and Whitehall half empty as the strangest creature of all, echoing, shuttered, mice boulder in the galleries, the palace like a great shell the animal has crawled out of, and you air empty rooms against her return and understand for the first time that the palace is not the point. She is the point. Wherever that one heartbeat is, that is England's capital, and Whitehall without her is just the biggest building in Europe. She comes back with the autumn, and the whole machine spins up around her again in a single day. Fires, food, guards, music, petitioners, and the light in the privy lodgings burning past midnight as if it had never gone out, and you realise you have missed it. Missed the footsteps. There is no accounting for what a boy will grow loyal to. By your second accession day, you're no longer the newest thing in the wardrobe. There is a new boy, Peterkin, 10 years old, from Lambeth, all eyes, who gets lost exactly where you got lost and cries exactly one time in his first week, at night, muffled, the way you did, and you lie in the dark listening and then do for him what Ned did for you, which is nothing, loudly. You start talking to no one about how you got lost your second week carrying a bolster bigger than yourself and were rescued laughing by a scullion, and how Crane once found you pressing a seam like you were petting a cat, and by the third story the muffled sound has stopped, and by the fifth he is asleep. It gets easier. You don't say it, you prove it, night by night, the way it was proved to you. And Crane begins, without ever announcing it, to teach you the wardrobe book. Letters you had, your father paid for that much. But now winter evenings, the tallies, the hands the entries are written in, the inventory's iron poetry. Item, 1 counterpoint of tapestry work, frayed at the nether corner. A wardrobe man who can't read the book serves the linen, Crane says. A wardrobe man who can read the book serves the Queen. You learn the book. Slowly, by candle end, with cold fingers, you learn it. And something in you that was a labourer becomes, stitch by stitch, a servant of the household in the full old meaning, a keeper of things, a man of trust in the smallest degree, and the smallest degree of trust in that house is still a coin with her face on it. Let me give you one more winter in full before the years begin to run. Because the middle years of a service are where a life actually lives, and yours lived in details like these. New Year's Day, which at court is the day of gifts, not Christmas, New Year's. On the 1st of January, the entire structure of the kingdom expresses itself in objects, and clerks write every one of them down in a great roll. Who gave the Queen what to the ounce and the pearl, and what she gave back? Gilt plate by weight, rank by rank, an entire politics conducted in cups and gloves and embroidered sleeves. The great give gowns and jewels. Bishops give gold. Her physicians give pots of preserved ginger and candied fruits, which after the winter of the doctor you can never again hear of without a small cold turn in your stomach. And her humbler servants give what they can, and she takes it, and this is the part nobody believes until they see the roll. The Queen of England accepts a pot of quince marmalade from her sergeant of the pastry, a handkerchief from a laundress, 24 larks from a household man, and it is written in the same roll as the Lord Keeper's gold, because the roll is the household saying to itself, once a year we are one body, from the crown to the spit. The wardrobe's gift goes up through Master Jennings. Needlework cushions 1 year, a quilt of sarsenet another, and your hands are in the making of the winter's finest linen. Besides, the smocks and pillow bears worked for her own use, and here you learn the deepest rule of your whole trade, deeper than seals, deeper than searching, and it is taught to you not by Crane but by a woman. Her name is Mother Sexton, and she's the eldest of the laundresses who serve the body linen, a small iron woman past 60 with forearms like a waterman and hands boiled pink and smooth by 50 years of lye, and she has washed for the Queen since the coronation, and she frightens porters. It is she who takes delivery of the finest work, and she who catches you once in your 3rd year, standing at the trestle looking 1/2 second too long at a smock of the Queen's own, at the impossible fineness of the cambric, and she comes across the room like weather, and puts herself between you and the linen, not angry, worse than angry, level. You're the seam boy, Crane's boy. She looks at you the way you've learned to look at stitching. Then learn the last seam boy, the one nobody sews. Everything that touches her body is her body. What you wash, what you carry, what you mend, you carry the Queen, and you carry her the way the priest carries the host, which is to say, it passes through your hands, and it was never in your hands. A man asks you in a tavern what the Queen's linen is like. Fine, they will ask. Men have asked me for 50 years, offered money, offered marriage. One fool offered both. You say, linen is linen. You say it's stupid, and you say it every time. Because there are men who would pay gold for one thread of what we handle, for charms, for poison, for plain filthy wandering, and every thread they can't get is our work. The guard keeps her doors, we keep her body's privacy, and hers is the only body in England that has none left except what we keep. She steps back, looks at the trestle, then at you, and something almost soft crosses the iron. 50 years, and I've told them linen is linen. It's the truest lie in the kingdom. Get on. You get on, and in every tavern for the rest of your life, when the question comes, and it comes all your life, the answer is stupid and identical. Linen is linen, and every time you say it you feel the little click of a seam holding. That same winter gives you the storm. It comes up the river on a February night, a real southwester, and the palace turns out its fire watch and its roof watch both, because a gale in a torchlit town of timber is 2 disasters courting, and you and Tam draw the leads above the wardrobe range, the very walks Crane showed you in April sunshine, transformed now into the deck of a ship. You go up the turning stair with a shuttered lantern and come out into a world made entirely of noise. The wind is a body. It leans on you deliberately, shifts its weight, tries your footing like a wrestler, and the lead walks are wet black and humming, and all around you the palace roofscape roars, slates lifting somewhere and clapping down, a loose shutter below going like a drum, the weather vanes shrieking on their pins, and the river, when the lightning opens it, is a plain of hammered pewter crawling with white, every moored barge and lighter plunging at its ropes. Your task is idiot simple and mortally serious. Walk the range, watch the chimney stacks down their length for sparks blown flat, watch the neighbouring roofs, and if fire shows anywhere, get to the bell rope at the stairhead before anything else in the world. So you walk it, bent double, hand on the rail chain, Tam behind you with the lantern, both of you soaked in the first minute. And the strange thing, the thing you could never afterward explain to anyone who had not stood a roof watch, is the exhilaration. 14 stone chimney stacks between you and the far turret, each one breathing its banked warmth up into the streaming dark, and you check everyone, palm to the stone, feeling for the wrongness of heat, finding only the good drowsy warmth of tended fires, stack after stack after stack. All's well, all's well, all's well. And below your feet, under the lead and the timber and the plaster, 1,500 rooms of sleeping and watching. People trust the roof to hold, and do not even know your name is on it tonight. Near the end of the range, Tam grabs your arm and points, and your heart slams before you see it is not fire. It is the window. The one lit window in the privy lodgings, burning steady behind its glass through all that chaos, gold and small and absolutely unmoving in the middle of the howling dark, and the two of you stand there streaming, holding the chain, looking at it, and Tam puts his mouth to your ear and shouts the only possible sentence. Does she never sleep at all? And you shout back the palace's whole wisdom on the matter, which is Crane's answer and Mother Sexton's answer, and the answer of every soul below stairs. 4 words, blown to rags by the wind as soon as they leave you, not while it blows. By morning the storm has gone off east to trouble the sea, and the damage is 2 chimney pots, a drowned garden, 40 slates, and one of the Emperor's heads on the Holbein Gate, turned a little askance on its roundel, so that for weeks afterward, until the masons come, the Emperor Nero regards the traffic of King Street with a sceptical tilt, and the carters passing under the arch touch their caps to him, and the whole street finds this much funnier than it is, the way people do after a bad night that ended well. And the last lesson of that winter is small, and it is yours alone. Coming down from the leads in the grey of that morning, boots full of water, you pass the chapel just as the household service ends, and the singing children come out with the gentlemen of the chapel behind them, and one small chorister, 8 years old maybe, dead asleep on his feet the way children can be, walks straight into you, bounces and is caught by your 2 hands before he falls, and blinks up at you without the least idea where he is, and says, with enormous dignity, "I was singing," and is retrieved by an amused gentleman and towed away. And you stand in the passage, soaked, aching, 20 hours awake, laughing entirely alone, and it goes into the horn box of your memory with the aglet. The palace of the sleepless queen, guarded to the teeth, wound tight as a clock against poison and fire and Spain and the dark, and through the middle of all its fear, every single morning walks a line of children singing, half of them asleep, all of them safe, which was, when you came at last to make the final tally, the entire point of everything. The years begin to move the way years do once a life finds its channel, faster in the memory than they ever were in the knees. Your 3rd winter, Ned finishes his time and goes up, a groom's place in the removing wardrobe, the one that travels and marries the kitchen maid from the 12th night dancing, whose name is Alice, and you stand at the church door in your best doublet with the aglet in the seam and eat wedding cake in a Westminster tavern, and feel time move under you like the tide under a wherry. Tam's voice breaks and keeps breaking comically, for what seems a year, and then one day he is taller than you, which is against nature and never fully forgiven. And the Queen's nights, the deep unchanging weather of your world, go on. You could set the palace clock by her sleeplessness now, You know the sounds of her house at every hour the way a sailor knows his ship. Which stair the night basin goes down, which lady's cough is which through which door, the difference between the gallery footsteps of an ordinary bad night and the footsteps of a night after ill news, which are slower and stop longer at the window. Ill news comes more often as the decade turns. Ireland is burning its way through armies and treasure. Harvests fail twice, 3 times, bread riots in the shires, lean beggars at the very gates of the richest palace on earth. Old Burgley, the Lord Treasurer, the last of the men who built the reign with her, dies in the summer of 1598, and they say she sat by his sick bed and fed him broth with her own hand. The Queen of England spooning broth like a good wife, and when he was gone she would weep at the sound of his name, and the household learned not to say it. One by one, the lights of her generation going out along the walls, and her still at the window, they sleep. I watch, and Essex. The comet of the court, the man who hunted the doctor to his death and wore the triumph like a plume, goes on rising and blazing and quarrelling, adored by the city, worshipped by his soldiers, ruinously certain of himself, until the quarrels reach the Queen herself, and there is a day, men whisper, when he turned his back on her in council, and she struck him across the head, and his hand went to his sword hilt, to his sword in her presence, and only other men's arms stopped what could never have been taken back. He goes to Ireland with the greatest army of the reign, and comes back wrong, unbidden, ruined, and after that it is only a long fall with a scaffold at the bottom of it. And in February of 1601, when it ends on Tower Green, you're 21 years old, and you stand in the wardrobe court hearing the guns and find you feel no triumph at all. Only the cold arithmetic your winter taught you at 14. Fear must land on someone. The man who aimed it at a doctor caught it himself at last. In this house, the wheel turns for everyone, and the only sin the wheel never pardons is believing you are not on it. The Queen dances less after that. The musicians are sent for as often, more often, but the galliards grow rarer and the footsteps in the gallery slower, and there is a new thing in the house's weather, unnameable for a long time, and then one day, folding sheets, you find the name and wish you hadn't. The palace is beginning, in 10,000 tiny disloyalties of the eye, to look north, to Scotland, to the next reign. Men are careful, men are elaborately loyal, and men's eyes slide, the way she always knew they would, and she sees it, because she sees everything, and it must be like watching your own guest glance at the door. You stay. That is your whole biography for those years, and I give it to you with pride. You stay, and the linen is right every night, and the seams are red every night, and the bed is safe every night, and no one ever knows. Because the whole art of your service is that there should never be anything to know. Crane's hands begin to fail him in the winter of 1601, the great scarred hands, swelling at the knuckles till he cannot close them around a fold, and he drills you and Tam and 2 juniors through every last corner of his head all that winter. Relentless, repetitive. An old man pouring 39 years from one vessel into others before the first one cracks. In the spring he is pensioned, honourably, a groom's pension and a nephew's household in Lambeth to grow old in, and on his last evening he walks the stores alone with a candle for an hour, touching the presses, and then he puts the belt of keys into your hands, not ceremonially, just puts them there. The way you hand a man a burden you trust him to carry, and says the last thing he ever teaches you. It was never the linen boy, it was the nights. We kept her nights. Whatever they write in the books about this reign, wars and armadas and great men's speeches, remember there were also people who just kept her nights, so there could be days. Keep them well. He dies 2 years later, in Lambeth, in his sleep, in a bed, which is the whole blessing a bedman asks. And now it is March of 1603, and you are 23, a groom of the wardrobe of the beds with a belt of keys, and the court is not at Whitehall. The court is upriver at Richmond, the warm palace, the winter box where the Queen was carried before Christmas, because her physicians begged for its heir, and you are of the household that went with her, and I will tell you the end the way it reached you, at your level, through hands and linen and closed doors, because that is the only honest way I know. She stopped sleeping. She, who had rationed sleep all her life like a general rationing water, now could not find it at all. And then, at the end, she refused the bed itself. Day upon day, the Queen of England would not lie down, stood, walked, then sat, on cushions on the floor of her privy chamber, dressed, her finger often in her mouth, silent for hours, and would not be moved. And the cushions came through your hands, and I want you to feel that. The last furniture of the greatest reign in England's story was not a golden bed. It was floor cushions, plumped and carried and quietly exchanged by servants like you, for an old woman who had spent 45 years refusing to lie down while there was watching to be done, and was refusing still past all sense, past all physic, past the pleading of her counsel, because some sinew in her had confused lying down with surrendering, and had perhaps never been wrong. They got her to bed at the very end, when the strength for refusal was gone. The house went soft-footed as snow. Music was played in the outer chamber low. The Archbishop knelt at the bedside through the last night, an old man on his knees for hours, praying till his own strength failed, and she pressed his hand when he would have stopped. You were in the palace, awake, of course awake, all the household awake in the way of houses where death is working, fires tended silently, everyone speaking in the undervoice, and between 2 and 3 in the morning, on the 24th of March, 1603, in her bed at Richmond, mildly they said, like a lamb, like ripe fruit falling, the watch ended. You heard it as a change in the sound of the house. No cry, just doors, and then more doors, and then a horseman, a single set of hooves going hard in the dark toward the North Road, Sir Robert Carey riding for Scotland with a ring, and by the time the ordinary bells of the morning rang, they were ringing for a different England. You went to the linen stores at dawn because you did not know where else to go, and stood among the presses in the cedar smell, and cried the way men of 23 cry, briefly, furiously, ashamed, with your fist against a shelf, for an old woman who never knew your name, whose hand you saw once at the level of your lowered eyes, whose nights you kept for 9 years. And then you washed your face, because Crane checked, even dead, even from Lambeth Crane checked, and you went to work because the household of a dead queen has more work than it has ever had, and grief in service is a thing you fold and carry like everything else. The last service you do her is the truest one, and it is bedding. Of course it is bedding. The body was brought down the river by night, from Richmond to Whitehall, on a barge hung with black torches on the water, and lay at Whitehall for weeks while the realm arranged its grief, and its new king travelled slowly south. A queen lying in her own palace must be watched and waited on in death as in life. Ladies about her by turns, night and day, candles never out, and the chambers of that watching must be dressed, hung, cushioned, kept, and it was your wardrobe that dressed them. black hangings from stores you had inventoried without ever quite believing they would be used in your time. You worked in rooms where you had once knelt behind a bolster and hung mourning cloth over tapestries you had aired 100 times, and you did the seams of that black work as carefully as you had ever done the white, though there was no one left to poison, because care was the only language you had ever been permitted to speak to her, and you were not going to fall silent now. On the 28th of April they took her to Westminster, the short way, the way you could have thrown a stone, and London stood on London to watch. They say there were more people packed into the streets and windows and rooftops than any living person had ever seen in one place, and when the chariot passed with the coffin, and on the coffin the effigy, her image crowned and robed, lifelike, lying as if asleep in the April light, there went up from the whole crowd at once a sound, a sighing and groaning and weeping together, such as, a man wrote who heard it, had never been seen or known in the memory of man. You heard it from within the procession, walking small in the black-clad river of the household, a groom of the beds among 1,000 mourners, and the sound moved over the crowd like wind over standing corn, street after street taking it up as she came, and you understood that all those thousands were doing at last all together in daylight what you had done alone in the linen store at dawn. Asleep. The effigy lay as if asleep. All those years the whole art and armour of the state bent to guarding her sleep, and the last image England kept of her was sleep at last, carried shoulder high through weeping streets to the Abbey, past the end of King Street, under the shadow of the palace whose nights she had walked, and into the dark of the vault, where no watch is needed, and none is kept, and the sleeper is safe forever. The new king came south through a rejoicing country, and the machine turned as machines do. Whitehall filled again with new voices, Scots voices, new favourites, new fashions, a king who hunted by day and had a wife and children, a court where the succession was a nursery instead of a silence. Good servants were kept on where they could be, and you were a good servant, and you were kept. And the linen was right, every night, for the new reign too, because that is what the wardrobe is. Rains pass through it. It endures, folding. But it was never the same house at night. That is the one thing you would say if anyone had asked, and no one ever asked. King James slept. Whatever else history says of him, the man slept, and his palace slept around him, and for the first months of the new reign you would find yourself awake at 2 a.m. out of 9 years of habit, listening in a silence that had a hole in it, exactly the shape of light footsteps in a long gallery, 60 yards up and 60 yards back, and you would lie there in the dark, feeling the strangest grief of your life, grief for a sound. They sleep. I watch. Nobody watched any more. Nobody had to. It was better. It was safer, duller, warmer, better in every way a sensible man could name, and some unreasonable corner of you mourned it as long as you lived. You lived long. That is the mercy of this story, and I will spend it gladly. You rose in the wardrobe as Crane rose, groomed to yeoman in time, and you married, at 26, a silkwoman's daughter named Marjorie, who mended for the great wardrobe and could read a seam as well as you, and laughed at you exactly as often as was good for you, and you had children, and 2 of them lived, a son and a daughter, and the son had sons. You served on through the new reign, and into the years when the palace changed around you, when the old Queen's Whitehall began to be built over and improved and made modern, and one year they pulled down the old banqueting house and raised a new one of gleaming white stone, with a ceiling, in time, painted by a Fleming so gorgeously that men stood under it with their necks bent till they ached, and you walked past it to the stores thinking that Crane would have asked, first thing, flat-voiced, how such a roof was to be kept free of damp. You told your grandchildren almost nothing for years. Service holds its habits. But old men soften, and old men outlive their oaths' objects, if not their oaths. And there came winter evenings, very late in your life, by a small fire in Lambeth, of all places Lambeth, where Crane had gone to grow old, when a grandchild too wakeful for bed would climb against your side, and you would find the horn box with the bent silver-gilt aglet in it, and turn it in fingers grown as knuckle-swollen as your old master's, and begin quietly the way I began tonight. Once, when I was 14 and stupid, I had a battle with a mattress, and the mattress was winning. And you told them the smell of cedar and pepper, the crack of ice in the ewer, the lances breakers like ordnance in the November sun, the courtyard full of still men, and a word going through them like a rat through straw. 4 grown men around a scrap of metal on a white cloth, a roof in April, and a whole city lying at your feet like a map, held up, all of it, by one heartbeat. And once, only once, when the fire was very low and the child nearly asleep and your wife long since gone up, an old woman in a nightgown at a black window, no crown, no paint, straight as a mast, keeping the watch no one could keep for her. The child asked, half in dreams, was she magic then? No, you said. She was tired. She was tired for 45 years and she never once lay down on duty. And that isn't magic, little one. That's worse. That's work. Magic would have been easier. And the child slept, the way children sleep, all at once, boneless, trusting, in a warm room, in a safe house, in a country at peace. And you sat looking into the coals, doing the sum an old servant does at the end. Whether any of it mattered, the seams, the seals, the tallies, the 10,000 small unfamous vigilances, and the answer was breathing against your side. Before we let the fire burn down entirely, let me take you back one more time. Not to an event. Events are done with us. Let me take you back to an ordinary night, the kind history never records because 10,000 of them happened and nothing happened in any of them, which was the whole triumph. A Tuesday, say. February, the middle of the reign of your service. Come and walk it with me, slowly, the whole palace, top to bottom, the way you knew it in the soles of your feet, and let it do to you what it did to you then, which was, in the end, a kind of lullaby. It begins on the river, because everything at Whitehall begins on the river. The tide is coming in the dark, pressing up under the privy stairs with the sound like a great animal drinking slap and draw, and the barge house creaks on its piles, and far out on the black water a waterman's lantern slides downstream. One small warm star, and his oars knock in the rowlocks, a wooden heartbeat fading east toward the bridge. The mud smell is sheathed tonight, the tide covering it, and what the water gives the palace instead is cold, clean river air, and the tar of ropes, and, faintly, from some moored lighter, wet firewood. The gates are shut. You can stand in the outmost court and hear the whole rim of the palace being awake on your behalf. The porter at the great gate shifting on his stool, the small tin sounds of a yeoman's harness as he changes his lean against a wall, and every so often, ritual as owl call, the night word passing between posts, low voices trading a syllable and going quiet. Torches burn in their brackets down the long face of the court, each one hissing gently, spitting when the pitch finds a damp thread, throwing rings of copper light that breathe in the wind, and between the rings the dark is absolute, and the dark is also guarded, and knowing that changes what dark is. Cross the court. Your feet know the cobbles, which ones stand proud, which ones rock. Under the covered way, the air changes, stone cold, still, smelling of wet slate and yesterday's torch smoke. A cat details past you on business of her own, the palace cats being the only household members exempt from all regulation. Somewhere behind the kitchen wall, a spit chain settles with a slither and a clink as the banked fires tick and cool, and the smell here is enormous and gentle at once. A whole day's roasting soaked into stone, ashes, bread, the sweet ghost of burnt sugar from the confectionery, and under it the scrubbed wood smell of tables sanded white by 100 years of scouring. Up the back stair now, the one with the rope worn glossy as horn, past the landing where the rushlights are kept, and along the lower gallery. Listen, this is the layer of the palace that sleeps, and it sleeps aloud. Behind every third door, breathing, the household in its hundreds stacked in truckle beds and pallets, grooms and pages and waiters, a snore here answering a snore there across the corridor like frogs across a pond. A man cries out one word in a dream, indignant, and goes under again. Mice work the wainscot with a sound like tiny dry rain. The rushes underfoot give up their bruised green smell where your feet press, day-old rushes, sweet yet, mixed with the bitter fleabane strewed against vermin, and your rushlight pulls all the shadows of the gallery along the wall beside you like a companion. Now the stone gallery, the great one, and here the palace grows grand even in the dark. The cold coming off the window glass in waves, each pane holding one bent star. Moonlight, when the clouds allow, falling in long lozenges across the matting, and the tapestries on the inner wall stirring, just stirring, in draughts you can't feel, so that the woven figures, kings and hunts and virtues, seem to breathe once and be still. You walk the outer edge, always, where it doesn't creak, though you carry nothing tonight, out of pure habit, the habit being the true livery of your kind. Halfway along there's a bracket clock in a recess, and its tick is the loudest voice in 60 yards, and it has the gall to strike, 2 strokes, small and golden and self-important, and the sound rolls away down the gallery and dies somewhere near the chapel door. And then the border, the end of the common world, the door to the privy gallery and the 2 yeomen at it, big men gone still as furniture with the hours, halberds leaned in the angle of arm and shoulder, and the candle in the sconce between them bowing every time the door beyond is opened somewhere out of sight, which is how you know, standing in your own darkness with your little light, that the inner house is awake. The candle bows. Somewhere past that door a lady is carrying something along a matted floor. A voice, a single low woman's voice, reads 3 sentences worth of something and stops. Water is poured. A fire is fed. You hear the coal go on, a soft mineral rush, and settle, and the footsteps. You would not stay to listen. You never stayed. But you would hear them for the length of time it took you to pass, up the inside of that guarded world, unhurried, back and forth, and every servant who ever passed that door at that hour did the same small involuntary thing you did, which was to walk a little softer, as if softness could be lent, as if a whole palace padding quiet on its errands could pool its sleep somehow, and pass it through the wall to the one person it was all for, who could not use it. She had everything, you understand. Both of you understood it, the boy you were and the old man you became. Everything on this earth except the one thing you had, the thing every scullion and spit boy and wardrobe lad in that great stone hive owned outright and spent nightly like princes, the ability to lie down, close your eyes and trust the watch to someone else. You could, you can. That is the inheritance, and it is not small. Every guarded gate you never think about, every clean seam you never check, every night you've ever ended by simply, stupidly, magnificently falling asleep, sure without even knowing you were sure that the world would still be holding when you open your eyes. Somebody built that surety, layer by layer, watch by watch, in 1,000 palaces and towns and houses, out of 10,000 small unfamous vigilances, and handed it down and down and down until it reached the bed you're lying in right now. The palace itself did not last. I should tell you that, because you deserve the whole of it. Whitehall outlived its great queen by less than a century as a living court, and then, on a January night in 1698, a servant's fire got loose. One coal, as Crane always said. One coal and a lazy watch, and the whole vast impossible sprawl of it. The 1,500 rooms, the galleries, the stone gallery with its bracket clock, the wardrobe stores with their cedar presses, the matted floors where a boy once knelt behind a bolster, burned in one night to the ground. Almost nothing stands now. The white banqueting house survived, the one with the painted ceiling, alone in a street of government buildings that still borrows the old name, so that men in our own age say Whitehall daily, meaning power, without knowing they are speaking the address of a vanished labyrinth where a queen once paced away her nights above the heads of sleeping servants. The Holbein Gate stood a while longer, checkered and stubborn, straddling its street until they pulled it down for traffic. Traffic! The emperor's heads went to collectors. The road it stepped over runs yet. Everything burns or is pulled down or is improved away. The beds are ash, the linen is dust, the inventory books are curiosities under glass. The very river is embanked and tamed and no longer breathes its mud against palace windows because the windows are gone, and yet, some nights in that city, a light burns late in a high office window above the street still called Whitehall. Some minister, some clerk, some keeper of the modern watch, working past 2 while the town sleeps around them, and if you stood below in the dark and looked up, you would be seeing the oldest sight that address has to offer, older than the stone, old as the burden itself. One lit window, one sleepless keeper, and a whole dark country resting on the fact of it. They sleep. Someone watches. It has always been the arrangement. It is the arrangement tonight. There is one more room to visit before we sleep, and it is the garret. Your garret, over the wardrobe stores, on any night of those 9 years, and I want to put you back into it exactly, because this is the part of the story that was built for you. The stair up is a ladder stair, steep, and your legs at the end of a wardrobe day climb it like a penance, thigh by thigh, and the last 3 rungs are the hardest work of the whole day. The door is low. You duck by reflex even half asleep, the one time you didn't duck being commemorated forever by a small flat scar above your eyebrow. Inside, the roof comes down close on either side, old oak rafters silvery with age, and you know every one of them the way you know a horizon, and between them the little window, a yard of leaded glass, holding tonight 3 stars and the smallest rind of moon. Tam is asleep already, on us back, mouth open, 12 or 15 or 17 depending on the year, snoring the honest snore of the completely spent. Peterkin, in the later years, curled small as a comma under his blanket with just a whirl of hair showing. The room smells of boys and wool and the cedar that comes up through the floorboards from the presses below, so that all your life afterward, cedar will smell to you like the top of the day, like permission, like almost done. You sit on the edge of the pallet and take your shoes off. And that exact moment, the left shoe dropping from your hand to the floor with a knock, your foot released, the cold air finding it through the stocking, is one of the purest pleasures owned by anyone in this 1,500-room palace, up to and including its owner. You rub the arch of your foot with your thumb. Everything aches, and it is the good ache now. The day's ache with the day behind it. Your shoulders unclench in stages, like something being unloaded. Your hands, cracked, greased, schooled, expensive hands now, hands trusted with a queen's seams, lie in your lap doing nothing at all, and doing nothing is so sweet it is almost loud. You lie back. The pallet knows you. The flock has taken the print of you these years and receives you like an agreement. 2 blankets, still not strictly permitted, drawn to the chin, capped to the eyebrows, and the cold of the room settles down on top of the blankets like a cat, weightless and present, while the warmth builds underneath, your own small banked fire. Enough, enough, enough. And you listen to the palace, one last audit, the servant's habit that never dies, the wind trying the leads overhead, finding all secure, a shutter somewhere testing its latch, the tide, faint and enormous, drinking at the stairs, the watch, changing far below, 2 low voices and a door, the whole vast creature of the house breathing around you in the dark, guarded at every gate, counted in every press, tallied in every book, watched from every wall, and you inside it, one warm point in the honeycomb, nothing to guard, nothing to count, nothing to carry until the ice cracks in the ewer and the whole blessed wheel turns again. Tomorrow there will be featherbeds to turn. Tomorrow there will be seams under your fingers and frost on the courtyard, and Crane's flat voice and the long galleries cold. Tomorrow the whole palace will take up its 10,000 vigilances again, and yours among them. But that's tomorrow. Tonight you have done your part of the watching, and your part is done, and this is the hour when the watch passes from you. Let it pass. You're tired enough, warm enough, safe enough. You have a roof of old silver oak and 2 blankets, and the day's work behind you, folded right, every seam of it red. That's more than kings can always say. That's enough. Let the sounds go first. Let the wind have the leads and the tide have the stairs. Let the shutter test its latch without you. Let the clock in the stone gallery strike its small golden strokes to an empty dark and be answered by nothing. And let that be someone else's listening now. Let your hands go next, those good schooled hands, empty at last, heavy at last, no cloth in them, no keys, no weight. Let your shoulders give up the shape of carrying. Let your back settle into the print it has made, and the print hold you, the way you were held every night of a long useful life, by something that fit because you had earned its fitting. Let the thoughts come loose from each other, the day's tallies unstringing like beads, one and another, rolling away into the corners where the mice will audit them and let them go. They're counted. Everything in this house is counted. Nothing is lost. You can let them go. The same as last night. The same as every night of 9 years. The same as all the nights stretching on ahead of you and behind you and around you. The great commonwealth of sleepers in garrets and palaces and houses not built yet, in a city that will burn and be rebuilt and forget itself and remember, all of them lying down in their turn and trusting the dark to hold, because someone watches, someone always watches, and tonight it is not you. Centuries will pass. The palace you know will burn to ash in a single January night, and grass will grow where the wardrobe stood, and stone offices will rise on the grass, and men will say its name, meaning something else entirely. The river will be walled and lit. The road under the vanished gate will fill with machines no prophet dreamed. Every bed you ever made will be dust and the dust of the dust. But people will still lie down at the end of long days, still ache in the shoulders from carrying what they carried, still take off their shoes with that same knock and sigh, still listen for one last minute to the house around them holding and let go. Some things don't change. The tired body doesn't change. The need to trust the night to someone else, that doesn't change either. And somewhere, always, in every age, there is one light burning late in a high window, one keeper of the watch pacing away the small hours so the rest can rest. And the kindest thing the sleeping world has ever done for its watchers, the only thing it can do is this: sleep well, sleep deeply, make the watching worth it. So do that now. Let it come. Let sleep take you the way it took Simon Peck under his silver rafters 400 years ago, all at once, boneless, trusting. Let the world fade. Let the noise quiet. Let your thoughts slow and soften and finally stop. They sleep. She watches. She always did. You've earned this rest. Take it. Good night.